So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to do some introductions in just a moment, and then we're going to talk a little bit about bees, and then Gaz is going to talk a little bit about beekeeping here at Mid Counties, and then we're going to go over to our roving reporter Lee, and we're going to meet some bees, we hope. And then Gaz is going to come back and talk to you. Hopefully you'll all be big bee fans by the end of this session to how you can help bees. And then we will take some questions for you. So that's what we're going to go through today. So this is us. So let's first go to Lee, who's outside. Lee is our head beekeeper.
Hello, everybody. Hope you can all hear me. So yeah, I've been looking after bees for, I think this is my 8th season now. So before we set up the apiary at the Mid Counties Co-operative, I also set up 4 hives at the Southern Co-operative as well. So I wouldn't say I'm experienced, but I have probably written a book about what not to do about beekeeping, and that's helped my development. And I'm quite passionate because I've had such input from other people, other mentors. I want to give back and do the same for other people. So I think what's all about me is teaching others about beekeeping, the importance of bees, and just spreading the word about the good they do and what we can do to help them. That's what I'm all about, really. And I'm also the member benefits manager. I didn't say that, sorry.
That's your day job.
That's
your
right.
passion is
Yes.
bees.
Yes.
Right, Gaz.
Hi everybody, so I'm Gaz or Gareth, whatever you want to call me. I'm the design studio manager at Mid Counties and work alongside Alison, and have been learning the ways of the bees from Lee for a couple of years now, sort of fitting it around my my day job, and we get a nice bit of beekeeping in when we can. So that's me.
Thank you, Gaz. I'm Alison. I'm recently been promoted from junior and trainee beekeeper to beekeeper. I'm the newest member of the team. I've been at Mid Counties for 2.5 years, and my day job is that I'm the chief marketing officer, but I am absolutely a bee lover. And but last but not least, most importantly, in fact, Karen, who is our society events coordinator, she's a bee fan, and she's going to be managing the session today. Karen.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, as Alison says, I'm the society events coordinator, so I'm the one that sort of arranges all these conversations that you see on our events page. So yes, and as Alison said, big bee fan. So hope you enjoyed today's session. I'm really looking forward to it myself.
Fantastic. Okay, then. So a quick introduction to bees then. We have about 270 different species of bees in the UK. Majority of them are solitary bees, and solitary bees don't actually produce honey. They don't have a queen, they don't live in hives, and because they're solitary, they don't have any honey to protect, so they're generally very non-aggressive. We also have a number of bumblebees. They live in small colonies, often in burrows. They hibernate in the winter, and they never use the same site twice. And then last but not by no means least, honeybees. There's only one species of honeybee in the whole of Europe. They make additional honey in the winter, and they're the only bees to do so. And they don't actually hibernate, but they snuggle together, and they make a little ball in their hive to keep warm. So let's talk a little bit more about honeybees, because this is why we're here today. All honeybees are social and cooperative insects. There's about 50,000 bees in a hive, and there are 3 sorts of bees that you'll get to meet. So there's a queen, there's one queen, and she lays all the eggs in the hive, and she can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. There's the drone, who is the male bees, and they're basically the male bees. And then there's the worker bees, the female bees who don't lay, and they do all the work, collecting the pollen, making the honey, looking after the babies, and they're super busy the whole summer. So a couple of bee facts. Bees have 5 eyes. Who knew? They have 2 pairs of wings, and that's why they make a buzzing noise. They can fly up to 20 miles an hour. And if they lose their sting, they will die. So we need to try and keep our bees super calm. They've been around for about 30 million years. And they must collect nectar from about 2 million flowers to make 1 pound of honey. So it's very labor intensive, and our girls are very busy. If we can flick on. So why are bees important? Well, they pollinate. About a third of the world's food is dependent on our pollinators. And that's fruits, nuts, vegetable crops. They are really important. They contribute 400 million to the economy, and they don't get paid. And they are really key, I think, in terms of maintaining our food chain. If we can flick on. Bees are in decline, and they're in decline for a number of things. There are pests and threats that they have from other animals. So the Asian hornet is a predator on honeybees. They eat the larvae, and they can destroy a colony in days. They're actually on the other side of the channel. They're in Europe at the moment, and so we keep a weather eye out to see if they come over. We haven't seen any in mid-counties, but they're ones to watch. The other bee infestation or pest is the varroa mite, and they can also damage a colony. But by far the most damaging threat to bees are people, whether that be through the pesticides, herbicides, and things that we put on products and vegetables and fruit trees and things. Recently, the government approved the use of nicotinamide pesticides, which are really bad for bees. So we do damage that way. And then we do damage via the climate change. And our bees suffered this year specifically because we had a cold spell in February. If you remember, we had that snow, and that really confused and upset our bees. So I'm sure Lee will talk a little bit more about that. But now I want to hand over to Gaz, who's going to talk a little bit about beekeeping here at Mid-Counties. Gaz.
Hi everyone. So I'll give you a quick sort of whistle-stop tour of beekeeping and how we got started at Mid-Counties. So we started out keeping bees at Co-op House, our sort of head office or head site in Warwick in 2018. And we started off by basically sort of applying to our property group for a small grant to get us up and running, with a sort of business case basically of we're a cooperative, so we support the environment and environmental goals and things like that. So it made sense that we sort of walk the walk and we do our little bit at Co-op House to support the environment and support the UK bee population. And also, obviously, bees, they're great cooperators. If you think about it, they work together all for the same goal. And some of our longer serving members may remember we even had bees as part of our membership branding and on the membership card back in the day. So they're obviously great cooperators. So why would we not have some hives at Co-op House and support them? So we started off with 2 hives that came completely flat packed. So we had to sort of build them from scratch. So obviously that meant the co-op supporting us, which they did, was great around our sort of day jobs. So we finally got them up and running, and we only use local bees. So what does that mean? Basically, we work with a local beekeeping association, which Lee was involved with, and they supplied us with basically local bees that were sort of brought up and raised in the Warwick area. So we're supporting the local beekeepers there as well. Obviously, if they've got surplus, they're happy to sort of, swap and change and work towards whatever's best for the bee population. We also planted a bunch of bee-friendly flowers around Co-op House, which not only obviously is good for our colleagues, it looks very pretty when they're all in bloom, and is good for mental health when you come to work, seeing all the pretty flowers. But they're also obviously good to support our bees and our hives. And what else do? We educate people. So we are more than happy to take any colleagues out to the bees that want to visit and learn, and even maybe get involved and help us sort of look after them, or that might help educate other people that they come into contact with on why it's important to support bees. We offer speaking engagements as well, so if colleagues want to come and talk to us about the bees, they can. And Lee also recently did a school visit to his daughter's school to talk to the children there and educate them on bees and what we do and how to support them. And we also sell the honey that we obviously produce from our hives, which then goes back to supporting the running of them and the costs that are involved, which is great. If you can flick on. So a year being a beekeeper. It's a very busy year. They like to keep us on our toes, as I'm sure they'll tell you later on. So January, it's equipment maintenance and varroa control. So obviously we're sort of opening them up then over, because we've left them alone over the winter period. So we'll come in January when the weather's correct and sort of just check them, see if there's any parasites in there. If so, we'll have to take preventative measures. In February, we'll sort of check the food stores, see how the colony's building up, if they're sort of where they should be in terms of population. March, we'll check food stores again, because obviously the weather will be dependent on what the flowers are like, if they've got any forage, or if they're even coming out at all if it's too cold. And we'll just see if the colony is starting to build up again, keeping an eye on them. And then we'll move into spring. Hopefully we've got some flowers starting to bloom, and so the bees have got a bit of forage. The weather might start sort of warming up a bit, so they'll become a bit more active. So we'll inspect the guys like we have been recently, just to check for swarm control, make sure they're not building any queen cells, things like that. May, again, just keeping an eye on what the numbers are like. Hive inspection, swarm control, requeening, and just always checking as well, see if there's any parasites in there, like wax moth larvae or varroa. Keeping an eye on that constantly. June, we'll check the food, see if they're sort of bringing in enough pollen, building up their own food supplies, or whether we need to supplement them. Hopefully by June we shouldn't need to, because there should be a lot of forage around, hopefully. And the colony should be building up then to quite good numbers. Again, always keeping an eye on swarm control. Then summer, carry on with the hive inspections. We're coming into sort of the period now where hopefully the swarm level shouldn't be too bad, and they should be sort of coming out the other side of that, hopefully. But always keeping an eye out for that. And they should be starting to build up the summer honey now. So we'll look, see if they're building that up and whether we need to add any more boxes on top for them to expand. August, again, checking the honey supplies for the bees, make sure they've got enough to sustain themselves, as well as building up sort of the honey that we'll hopefully harvest. September, again, sort of just checking for parasites, seeing what the stocks are like, seeing the health of the bees. And then moving into winter, this is where we'll start sort of adding the winter feed on, and sort of maybe putting any insulation around the hives, getting them ready for sort of the cold weather coming, basically. And we'll sort of add things like mouse guards to stop any mice sort of getting in the hive, things like that. So basically sort of protecting them through the winter when we can't open them up and check on them as much, because obviously it's very cold and the bees need to keep warm. And that's pretty much it for autumn, really, just sort of going out and checking on them, doing a visual inspection. Moving on, so all about the honey, which we are. So we only produce from our sort of bees raw and pasteurized honey. which basically is nature intended it, so we don't really do anything to the honey other than filter it when we sort of spin it out, and we use the local Beekeepers Association sort of facilities to do that, which keeps our costs down as well. And we jar it up. As you can see, the lovely Alison is there jarring some up.
Amazing.
It's amazing. And we get different colours of honey. That depends on sort of what forage the bees are foraging on, basically. So it depends on the type of flowers that they're sort of gathering pollen from. Ours is sort of usually that sort of mid to deep amber sort of colour, as you'll see on the photo there, which is typical of the sort of flowers we've got around our sort of head office and area. So I'm just looking at time, I think.
Okay, thank you, Gaz.
Move on now
Let's
to
meet
the
our
exciting.
bees. So we're going to hand over now to Lee. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm hoping he's going to appear on our screens. There you are.
Yep. Can you see me all okay?
Yeah, we can see
Good.
you.
Good. Well, I'm going to try and balance being enthusiastic and not making the bees angry. So I'll do my best. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to squirt a little smoke in the entrance there, just so the bees know that we're on our way. Why do we use smoke? Okay, so the we use a mixture of cardboard, paper, and pine needles or pine leaves, so that we get a nice white cold smoke. What that does is it blocks the pheromone scent that the bees will release, especially the guard bees at the front door. They use the pheromones to try and communicate with the rest of the hive what's going on. So there was attack on the hive, they would let the rest of the colony know that there was an attack underway, and they'd all come out to greet me in a not particularly nice way. So by using the smoker, we can mask that scent, and it means that I'm safe. I can protect myself with the smoke. That's all I've got to protect myself with, but it works. Before I open the hive, what I would normally do is check the weather. Is it raining? No, so that's good. Is it cold? Well, it's actually okay today. It's about 14 degrees, so we know that the bees won't be too unhappy with opening the hive. And if I have a look now, there's still the odd bee still coming in from a late shift, so we know that they're still flying, so we're okay. So I'm going to open the hive. Just going to check that I've not got any flesh showing and I won't get stung. No, I'm all good. So I've got my hands covered. I've got my mask, my hood done up properly, so that's all good. So we take the lid off first, but actually before I do that, I'll just explain what the components of the hive. So you've obviously got the roof that keeps the hive dry, and the most important thing about a hive is that it doesn't get damp in it, because bees are okay with cold, but they're not okay with damp. They can keep themselves warm for periods of time, but they can't dry themselves. So got to make sure there's no leaks in that roof. At the moment, we've got a brood section, which I'll show you, and then we've got a section where we're collecting honey. This, just to make it easy for you to see, is this dark box here at the top. That's the honey box. So that's where we're hoping we'll collect some honey during the season. It's been a very difficult start to the season this season, so we actually haven't got much honey yet. There's been a lot of cold and wet weather in March and April, so the bees haven't had a lot of flying time, which also means they've stayed in a lot, and they've been using the honey that they've been actually capturing, on the good days. So yeah, there's not a lot to show you in the honey side, but I'm going to show you further down. But before I do that, I'll just explain. So this is what we call a super. That's where the honey goes, and then you've got the brood boxes below. We've got the traditional size brood box, which is about that size, and then we've added an extra super, which would normally be used for honey, on top, just to make it what we call a brood and a half. That means that the box is bigger, the queen's happier, she's got more room to lay, and that is a swarm prevention technique that's actually helped us this year. I know with other beekeepers that have unfortunately had early swarms in April, and that's quite rare. We've managed at this moment in time not to have a swarm yet. So it is working, but sometimes you just can't stop them if they want to do it. It's just all about knowing what's going on when, and taking the right action. So just it's got a little bit of smoke in that. I'm just going to take this off and I'll show you inside. I've got an upturned roof there so I can make sure that I don't lose any. So we've got a full hive. We've got bees in every seam of the frame here. They're just coming out to see me now, so I'm just going to just give them a little bit of smoke. And now I've got a nifty bit of kit here, which I got this year. Put a little frame in here, and that will just help us to take the first frame out. So I'm going to bring some over and I'll show you, because I know you're quite far, you won't be able to see in detail. Might need to get that going again in a minute, but we'll see how we get on. Right, so take the first one out. First one out on the edges is usually honey. So you normally get in the middle of a hive, that's where the brood is. It's the warmest part of the hive. And then the edges are usually where they store honey most commonly, unless you're struggling for space. So if I just bring this over and show you, this is a brood frame, but they've actually used it to put some honey away for a rainy day. So bring that right up close. You see that really pale there. I think you can see that if I've got that just right. Yeah. So that's capped honey. So they've got about half a frame of capped honey on this level. So there's not a lot there to keep them going. You probably can't see it, but in this area here, there is honey, but it isn't capped. They cap it when it's dehumidified enough so that it will save and it won't go off. So the stuff where it isn't capped, the bees will be working that to just take the water content down. I think it's 16%. Don't quote me on that. So yeah, loads of bees on just this outside frame alone, all behaving themselves, all holding on nicely onto the frame. They've all come in now, so this hive will be pretty full tonight. They'll all be bedding down for the night. Might be a few that are communicating with each other with some dancing. Probably not too much of that now, because they're not going to be telling the other bees where they've been and where is best to go and get some more pollen or nectar, because they're going to settle down for the night now. But well, let's just start off with this one first. What you're seeing here are all worker bees. So they're all female bees. Typically in a hive, you get about 50,000 of these in a hive, up to 50,000. At the moment, we're not at full capacity, but we're probably well, we're expanding quite nicely. So we're probably up to half that, I would have thought. Yeah, these are all female. The queen we probably won't find today, but there's only one queen in the hive, and then there are some drones which these lovely workers will have reared. So what happens is they create this nice cone shape themselves, and then the queen will lay into these individual cells, and then the workers will decide what then comes out of that cell. So they will decide whether it will be another worker, whether it will be a drone if they want to, if they think that the colony is strong enough to support male bees that actually aren't doing anything other than eating the stuff that they're producing, or another queen if the queen they've got isn't up to the job. So the queen is important because she lays all the eggs, but the workers are the ones that actually make the decisions in this cooperative. Not a cooperative I'm familiar with, but there we go. So we'll see if we can see some other bits to show you. I'm sure I'll be able to find a drone further on in here. We did have a little peek earlier on today just to see what was going on, and there is quite a bit that we need to busy ourselves with over the next few days. So as I said before, there hasn't been a swarm yet, but this hive is showing me signs it's ready to swarm. So first of all, the bees are hanging off, that's called bearding. That's an immediate sign that the bees are starting to get ready to swarm. This one is in the early stage of swarming. You can see here there's a queen cell, so that peanut shaped cell at the top there. Can you all see that okay?
Yeah.
So that one is capped. So that wasn't capped last week. That's actually been capped in the last 7 days. So they are in the early stages of swarming. What it means is I've got to have a little think about what we do next with Alison and Gareth. We may need to do an artificial swarm just so we can create 2 hives, or we may let it swarm and try and catch the colony. But you can see it there quite clearly now. There's quite a big cell, very different to the others. So just below it, you'll see the biscuity coloured just circles, which is darker than what I showed you earlier. That's not honey. They're the brood cells. So the queen's laid in there, and the workers have decided to make a worker out of that cell, so that you can see the difference between that one and that one. It's clear as day. I can't see any drones on here yet. You might see some really small bees. That one's quite a small bee. So they will have hatched in the last week or so. The young bees have usually indoor jobs, so they'll be cleaning, rearing other brood, and just tending to the queen. And it's the older bees that are trusted to go out and go and forage. So they all have specific duties, which is amazing for insects. They do it in an organised way. They all get on with each other as well. But yeah, there's no drones on that one. But I have seen some today, so I'll find you another frame with a drone on. But yeah, what this means with the queen cell is we're going to need to take action in the next day or so. I know that there's rain due. We're supposed to have 9 days of rain coming up, so I've probably got a window of tomorrow morning to do something, and then it's going to be too late. Have we got any drones on here? Yeah, there's one. Okay. Right, so the bees aren't particularly happy with me now, so I'm probably going to have to be quite quick on this. There's one there. So he is just blowing. He's bigger than the others. So can you see that? That one there? So
Yeah.
can you see that okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got bigger googly eyes than the others. He's longer. He's got a very fat abdomen. And yeah, his job is just to basically look pretty, eat all of the honey that the workers have made, and then go off, find a lovely queen in another hive and mate with her. So he's got a great job. But it's a very short life. So when it comes to September, he'll be kicked out of the hive and he'll die. So he's got a very short life compared to the other bees. Right. Okay. I think that's all probably I can show you at this point in time. So I'll hand you back to Gareth.
Thank you, Lee. I'm just going to pop us back into the presentation, and Gaz is going to take us into the final part of the conversation in terms of how you can help. I mean, we've met our lovely bees. They were very well behaved, given that it was late in the evening. So Gaz, how can people help?
Guys, so let's have a quick run through 1 to 6. So how can we help bees? Seems pretty obvious, but grow more flowers is a good one, or trees and shrubs that flower is great. So anywhere you've got a bit of room in the garden, make your garden look nice and help the bee population. We'll come on to different types of flowers a bit later on. I'll talk you through that. The other one is, if you can, let your garden grow wild. I personally tried this for a few weeks, but my other half made me cut the grass the weekend. But I did around the edges leave a few dandelions where I could, just to help the bees a little bit more. So if you can, just let your garden grow in like a little section. Doesn't have to be massive, but if you can leave a little section to grow wild with some wildflowers in, that would be great. Cut your grass less often, which obviously links in with number 2. Try not to disturb insects and nests and hibernation spots, because you may have some solitary bees in there. And the other one is think about how you use pesticides in your garden. So, you know, if you spraying your flowers with pesticides and things like that, then obviously the bees go and collect the pollen, it can cause some damage to the bees or maybe kill them if they're taking that back to the hive and it goes in the honey. So just think about that. And if there's any natural methods you can use, I know garlic's a good one for certain insects to repel them, which is, you know, less harmful to bees than using chemical pesticides. Now, number 6 is if you've got a bug hotel, put a bug hotel in your garden. I've personally got one in my garden for any solitary bees that may need to nest in there. I know my mum and dad have got one as well. I encourage them to get one up on the wall, and they've got, I do check it when I go around, and they've got some solitary bees in there nesting. So that's a good one. If you can flick on, Karen, for me. Brilliant. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what type of flowers we can plant to help bees. So if you can, purple and blue flowers are preferred by bees. They're naturally more attracted to them due to the basically UV light spectrum. So bees sort of seeing that sort of spectrum, and purple and blue have shorter wavelengths, so they're basically bees are more attracted to that because they can see them better. Whereas, say, red flowers have a longer wavelength, so bees can't actually see in red. And grow tubular-shaped flowers if you can. So if you'll see on the picture there, obviously foxgloves are a good one. It just gives the bees somewhere to land, basically. It's a bit easier for them. So they can sort of just rest on the flowers and have a bit of a rest while they're gathering the pollen. Grow flowers all year round if you can. So just try and sort of plan your planting. That's another good tip. So the bees have always got sort of constant supply of flowers in your garden if you can. And take part in No Mow May. That was a bit of a tongue twister and I got it right. So if you take part in No Mow May, basically just sort of what we touched on earlier, really try not to sort of mow your lawns if you can. And just let some of the wildflowers like daisies and dandelions and clover and things like that come through. And that just helps the bees at the start of the year when they come out foraging, which is around May. You can flick on for me, Karen. Okay, so here's some of the plants for bee lovers. So obviously in spring we've got sort of your typical English bluebells. I've got some personally in my garden, which the bees like. Crab apples, crocuses, flowering cherries, forget-me-nots, hawthorns. So if you can get some hawthorns, I've got a lot of hawthorn bushes around by me in the back of the garden, and they smell amazing when they flower, which is another benefit. Primroses. And then what we've got in sort of in between spring and early summer is what's called the June gap. So that's sort of where your spring flowers will sort of shoot up, and then they'll sort of start to die down. So it leaves a little bit of a gap in June of flowers and forage for the bees. So that's probably sort of where we go and check on our bees and just see how they're doing with their honey stocks and honey stores, and you know if they need any supplementary feeding maybe. And then early summer we sort of get a rush of flowering plants. So got a comfrey, which is another good one. I know any avid gardeners will know that's also good for sort of rotting down and using as a feed on other flowers and plants. Delphiniums, which I personally love. They're very lovely in the garden, and foxgloves, which I grow a lot of. And hardy geraniums, hollyhock. Hollyhock's a good one because they're quite large, quite big flowers, really easy for the bees to land on, like we touched on earlier. And thyme's another good one, I like that, and that's also obviously good. You can use it in your cooking. Then we're coming into late summer where we've got sort of asters, buddleias, cornflowers, dahlias, heather, ivy, and obviously a good one's lavender, because we all like the smell of lavender, very relaxing.
Thank you, Gaz. I think we're just about on time. We might even be a little bit early. So I'd like to thank my co-presenters. Lee, please, I hope you can hear us still, because there's going to be some questions for you. And Karen, so I'm going to hand over to you because I know you've been monitoring the chat, and I'd love to hear any questions for the team.
Right, so Carla's asking, is the European hornet a threat too? When you were talking about the different excellents that are a threat to our beehives, is the European hornet one of those?
Right. Lee, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can do. We do put up hornet traps in the summer, primarily to catch any Asian hornets. The European hornet doesn't really pose any threat, and we do catch them from time to time here. To be honest, it's the one we need to watch out for is the Asian hornet, which is trying to establish itself in the UK. There has been a couple of sightings already this year, which is really early. Normally, you're getting those in August, so the experts are suggesting that this could be one of the worst years for the Asian hornet, and they could become established. So they are a species that you need to report if you see one. So please be vigilant with us, and if you do see an Asian hornet, which is a black hornet with yellow legs, so they look like they've been dipped in paint. And there was a picture on here earlier. You'll be able to find them quite easily on the website, though. Then you need to report them to DEFRA, and then they'll send an inspector out to see if they can find the nest. But yeah, the European the European hornet, I don't believe poses the threats at the level of the Asian hornet.
Lovely,
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. I'm going to direct this one to you, Alison, because we saw that lovely picture of you collecting the honey. Shani wants to know where she can buy some of our Co-op House bee honey.
You need to come and see me, Shani. We were delighted last year that we got 50 jars of honey, but literally they went like hot jars of honey because they were highly popular. Everybody who's in the know, so Shani, I will keep you a jar when we do our honey collection this year.
Thank you, Alison. I think, Lee, you might have covered this, but I'm not sure. It says Shani also wants to know roughly how many bees do you think we have in each of the hives?
Okay. Well, at the peak of the season, it can get up to 50,000. We wouldn't be at that level yet, but we're in the period of time where the colony is expanding. So we'll be getting to capacity. When it hits capacity, that's when it can send off swarm triggers. So they may want to swarm because there's not enough room in the hive. So that's why we've doubled the size of the colony anyway. But also, if they're a healthy colony, they may want to swarm because they feel like they can go their own ways, divide and conquer, and they'll both be able to survive as viable colonies. So in answer to your question, I think we've probably got about 30,000, 20,000 maybe in there. When you open it at the moment, they don't spill out like lava, so I don't think we're up to full capacity, but there's quite a lot in there.
Brilliant.
And
Thanks,
more to
Lee.
come.
So Carla's asking, how do you know if they have enough honey to keep them going for the time of the year?
So Lee, did you want to answer that one? I
Yeah,
know
sure.
what we do at the end of the year just in case.
Yeah, sure.
But any time of the year, how do we check that?
Yeah, of course. So we keep a record every visit we inspect. We're looking for certain things. So we're looking to see if we can see a queen or queen cells. We're looking to see if we can see brood. We're looking to see if there's space for the queen to lay. We're looking to see if there's what they call stores. So stores is honey in essence. So when the bees have brought nectar back, they will transfer that into honey through working it through with their saliva. Sounds gross, doesn't it? It tastes great, doesn't it? So yes, how do we know? Well, we need to check if we find that there isn't any honey in there, and we can foresee in the weather that there's rain due or cold snap due. We need to take drastic action ourselves and put supplementary feed in there, such as this time of year it would be candy pollen, so it will be a fondant type based feed, which will help them with a food source. We wouldn't take any honey until late August, and we will only take the surplus honey. We still have to leave them with enough to get through autumn and then winter. So we wouldn't completely rob them dry because the hive would collapse. So we have to be very careful about that. But we have to make sure they've always got enough to see them for a few days if it gets wet. And if they haven't, we need to do something about that.
And there's two sorts of feed that we can give them, isn't there, Lee? There's the fondant, which looks like icing, but yellow, or you could give them sugar water. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we can feed them in the autumn once we've taken the honey away, and they're left with what's left for themselves. We may want to supplementary feed them with a sugar and water solution, and that is done at that time because we don't want that type of sugar and water solution getting in our honey, because then we're selling adulterated honey, and we're not allowed to do that. So we only apply that after the honey that we're selling has been removed, and before that we will use fondant.
Yep.
Cool. Lovely, thank you. Carl is also asking, how far will bees travel in search of pollen, or do they prefer to stay near the hive if they can?
Okay, I'll take that one if you guys are happy. So Carla, I think the typical honeybee can travel between sort of 1 to 6 kilometers on a foraging trip. But they have, I've read, been known to travel up to 13.5 kilometers. I guess if they're really desperate and they can't find any forage around by where the hive is. But obviously we sort of plant a lot of flowers around sort of Co-op house, so they do have forage quite close. So we hope sort of they use that first before having to travel too far and using up a lot of energy. But I know that National Grid as well, that are also on our sort of estate, they have sections they leave to grow wild for the bees as well. So they've also got that as a bit of a backup if some of our flowers aren't coming through quite as early as they should. But yeah, they can travel quite far. I think I said that in kilometres, but probably it's about 2 to 3 miles they'll travel on for the forage.
Lovely, thank you, Gaz. Hannah, if Hannah says she's got some questions, so if you'd like to take yourself off mute, Hannah, and ask your questions.
Hello.
Hi.
Actually, so I do know Gaz already. I create some of the sustainability content for the YCN, so that's me. So I have lots of questions. I am that person, so I'm really sorry. And it's mainly kind of about sustainability, and because obviously it's quite a controversial topic. You know, there's some people that are like, you know, we shouldn't eat honey, and then there's the other aspect as well. So I was just wondering, regarding supplementing the bees first, is it not better to leave them with more surplus honey rather than take away that and then supplement them? Yeah,
So
that's my question.
That's a difficult choice, and you know, I think we do want to farm honey because it helps us maintain the hives, and that is the decision that we've taken, that we do want to have hives at mid-counties. So we do need to sort of cover the cost of maintaining them. So we do need to take the honey, but it's one of those questions we prefer not to supplement them. So we are very careful. It's usually the supplement is to make sure that they just don't get into difficulties at all. And I know that we've had, and Lee's got a little bit more history than me, we've had problems in the past where they haven't had enough food and we hadn't supplemented them. So we need to make sure that we're getting that balance right. So I don't think there's a right or wrong on that one, Hannah, but we've made the decision that we would like bees at mid-counties. And so if we have bees at mid-counties, then we need to look after them properly and make sure that we can fund them.
Yeah, and I think my other question was answered because I was asking if the supplements affect the honey's quality, but you take the honey and then supplement.
Yes.
And then sorry, I hope we've got time. Another question is, how are the bees transported? I know you said you get them locally, but yeah, how does that work? And sorry, it's going to be that question as well. Do many bees die in the transportation process?
Hey, Lee, did you want to take that, because you've done the transportation of bees?
Of course, yeah. So we'll talk about this colony. So this one was from a local beekeeper. It was a swarm that was captured in a park. So it was a nuisance to park goers. It needed to be removed. So we gave them a home. So what that beekeeper had done was they'd put the swarm into a basket. It's a purpose-built straw basket called a skep, which has got ventilation in, so the bees are happy and comfortable in there. Quite often, what will happen is the swarm is captured, and then the swarm is left in the basket for a number of hours to calm down. So they'll upturn the basket with a stone underneath, so there's a gap for the bees to come and go. If they wouldn't be happy at that point in time, they could choose to fly off, but they choose to stay. The lid is usually a breathable cloth that's put over the top, and then they're transported by car to whoever wants to take them. Usually the beekeeper that finds them wants them themselves, but we've got quite a network of beekeepers, and if you want one and you put the feeders out, there's usually somebody that might know somebody who has caught an extra swarm and they don't know what to do with it, so they will let you have them. But yeah, there shouldn't really be any die-off with transporting swarms, because what happens is that when they swarm, they will guzzle a lot of honey. They'll take a lot down. They're heavy. They can't necessarily fly that much, and that's why you'll see them perched on a low-level fence or a branch or something, quite easily put into a straw basket, and they don't all fly away, again, because they're full up. They've just had a roast dinner in theory, and they can't move. And when you then bring them back to the hive, there's a number of ways you can put them in, but the way that I've done before is, and it was the best thing I've ever seen. Don't tell my wife that. It is better than watching one of my children being born. But so you put a ramp up to the hive, and you put a white cloth over the ramp, and then you empty the bees onto the ramp, and the bees choose to walk into the hive themselves, and it is absolutely fantastic walking the bees into the hive. The best thing I've ever seen. So yeah, they're given choice all the time, and they choose to go into that hive, and then we look after them, give them 5-star treatment. So who wouldn't want to stay with us?
So they're almost like rescues. It's very cute. And then I have 2 more questions, if that's okay. I would like to know if the wings on the queen are clipped to stop her flying away.
Absolutely not.
Ah, I love that. Okay,
She chooses to stay. We do mark her because she's really difficult to find. So Gaz and Lee and I, we had marked 2 queens last year. So we put a little dot of colour on the top of the thorax so we can spot her. You saw the frame was full of bees. So we had Greta last year was pink, and Jubilee this year is blue, but we don't clip their wings.
Thank you. And my last question is, if you are tracking like the carbon footprint of your hives.
Ooh, interesting
Sorry,
question.
I'm really sorry, my questions.
No, I wanted to ask a question back. I don't think we are. And my question back to you is, how might we do that?
Oh, well, I suppose it would be all about the transport, which is obviously super local. So that's
Yeah.
really good. And then all in like however you jar the honey and the sustainable practices you use to keep them. I'm not a beekeeper, but I mean, we can definitely share emails, and that'd be nice to like
Yes.
go through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, my gut feel, I suppose, is that it's pretty low, our footprint, because we, as we were talking about, Gaz was talking about, we don't pasteurize our honey. We centrifuge or spin out the honey, and then we filter it. So it's actually pretty low intensity from an electricity point of view. So and because everything is super local, I would imagine we have quite a small footprint, but I'd love to figure out with you what size it is and how we might do some things to address it.
I've talked to some other beekeepers, and they use water instead of smoke, because obviously smoke creates a bit of pollution as well. I don't know if you've ever.
I suppose the worry is getting the inside of the hive damp, which, as Lee was saying, we hate the wet. So I suppose that's I suppose it's a pro and a con you'd need to think about.
I think I should stop talking because we'll be here all night. So thank
You
you.
know,
so much.
you're most welcome, Hannah.
Thanks,
You know, I love that your enthusiasm. I love that you love bees. I love that you are interested in how we can do that sustainably. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Hannah. Anne's asking, is the honey produced for sale to keen members?
If it literally it's gone within a week, because we have a small production run, and if a keen member would want to give us your details, then we can absolutely save you a jar.
Marvellous.
We've got our own email address, so if
I-
you wanted to email us, it's
Yes.
bees@midcounties.coop.
Louise has got a question. What temperature are the hives in the winter?
Ooh. Lee, you're going to need to answer that one.
Put me on the spot. It's a textbook job, that one. I don't know. That I know they maintain it all the same all year round. It's probably a question that I'd need to get right if I was taking a quiz, test. I couldn't give you an accurate answer on that, but I know that they do maintain it all year round. So if it's cold, they make a ball to keep warm, and if it's warm, then they will basically stand upright with their wings out, and they will flap to create a breeze, which cools the hive inside. But what that temperature is, I honestly couldn't swear, hand on heart. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that one.
No, that's all right. Brian's asking, how much does it cost to start beekeeping, including collecting and extracting the honey, and how is the extraction done?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you get second-hand items, which are just as good as new, then, and probably with our friends that on here that are keen on sustainability, that's probably the best way to go. You're going to save yourself a lot of money. And hives do last a long time if you look after them. So, I mean, these hives here have seen 5 years already, and they may need a paint this year, or they may need treatment, but they'll last. Yeah, you can probably pick up from a local beekeeper association a whole hive, including a colony inside, for under £200 second hand, if you get the time right and you know somebody. So always the first port of call is to join a beekeeper association. You then get into the network of the people that know, and then you can put the feelers out for equipment. If you buy a brand new hive, you're probably looking at something in the region of £600 or £700, I would have thought. If you buy a swarm from somebody, you're looking at probably £100, unless they're a friend and they give them to you for free. Then all the honey processing equipment can be quite expensive, and we haven't gone down that road. We've taken the approach of utilising the facilities of the Beekeeper Association, and we do that free of charge. We just book the time in on the facility. So there are cheaper ways of doing it, and I would say the first port of call for the best, the cheapest way is through your friends, the Beekeeper Association.
And Carla, you just recently became a beekeeper. Did it set you back too much?
Well, I was donated a hive, which, as Lee said, they seem to last quite a long time. This one must be at least 20 years old and has been well looked after. I think if you wanted to spend a lot of money, you possibly could, but Lee put me in touch with some people that will help me out with a lot of the equipment until I kind of get up and running. The only bit I haven't explored is the harvesting of the honey, but to the point you just made, if I can use someone else's, then potentially. So I've inherited a free hive, and I probably spent 50 quid on frames and foundation. That's about it.
And you have your bees already, Carla?
No, my bees are coming in the next couple of weeks, so we're waiting for the weather to warm up so they can split their hive, and then they'll arrive. And then I'll really need some help.
Yes. Well, come and join us. Come and visit our bees, and you can get used to them.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, while you're on, Carla, do you want to ask your question? Seems you're already
Yes,
Unmuted.
I said, is it correct that if a swarm isn't captured whilst they set up home naturally, i.e. in a tree, they typically don't survive long due to the varroa mites, or do they live naturally or wild in the UK?
Lee?
Yeah, they well the colony that we've got are wild bees, and we believe they may be varroa resistant. There might be a strain of resistance there. But yeah, some bees that swarm and find a nice place to live, it might be a perfect place to live, and they might be happy for a year or two, but because they don't have a beekeeper looking after them and they don't have somebody treating them for varroa, eventually that colony will collapse. But they may also swarm from that new location near after, and then a beekeeper might catch that additional swarm. So you don't know how many times they will divide and swarm. So yeah, typically, I mean, nature knows what it's doing, but humans have made it difficult for bees to do it themselves now, and the climates aren't what they were. When we're going with this, really, I suppose humans need bees and bees need humans now. I think, and we look out for each other. I'm sure a swarm would survive if left, if it found a good place to live. But the future of it is the thing that's in question.
Okay, thanks, Leah. And I've got one more question that's from Scott. Are there any known measures that can be used to protect our bees from other insects such as the Asian hornet?
I don't think that in terms of the major insects that attack or things that attacked bees, the Asian hornet is the worst, and then the varroa mite. And Asian hornets, it's really about spotting them and keeping a weather eye out. And then the varroa mites, we do treat them. I'm just wondering, Lee, are there any other diseases or conditions or any other things that we need to watch out for?
Sure, I'm going to stand up because my knees are hurting now. I would say the only thing I could add to that, Alison, is probably what they call good husbandry, which is just making sure that that your tools, your hive is clean and well looked after, well maintained. Removing old comb once it starts to go dark will ensure that fresh comb is regularly inserted. Probably a good ratio of a third of the comb should be replaced every year, and that will reduce the risk level with regards to disease. So yeah, just looking after them and just making sure that they're healthy will help them be more resistant.
And I guess, like you said earlier, Lee, it's putting up the sort of wasp traps and hornet traps, and trying to catch the Asian hornets before they sort of strike, I guess, as well, and just keeping your eyes out really for it, because obviously the Asian hornet's probably the worst one to attack, really, because like you said, we can keep an eye out for varroa and things like that within the colony, but most pests, I'm sure you'll back me up, Lee, the bees will sort of attack themselves if they can, and sort of try and defend themselves.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Kick them out the hive.
You're right, like wax moth.
Yeah. But obviously the Asian hornet's quite large and quite aggressive towards the bees, so they're probably the worst.
Yeah, good maintenance of your hive will ensure that they are healthy. There is another thing called a European foul brood, which is it's a disease which will affect young brood, and they basically they start smelling foul and they rot. So if that's spotted, then significant interaction is needed by a local inspector. They have to come and basically destroy them, which nobody wants. So it's very rare, but yeah, if and it is spread from hive to hive. So yeah, just making sure that that you're putting fresh comb in and you're just removing the old comb and just keeping them tip top healthy is the best thing you can do as a beekeeper to help them get a best season.
Cool, thank you.
All righty. I think, Karen, was that all our questions?
Yeah, that's all the questions that are in the chat, unless anybody else has anything else they want to ask.
Carla's typing. I'm now hanging on with anticipation. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. All very
Shani.
good.
All right, guys.
Thanks,
I'm conscious it's 7 o'clock. I'm sure Lee wants to get in and out of that suit. This has been fabulous. I'm really happy that you got to meet our bees. We absolutely love them. And yeah, keep in touch with us because there will be some honey at the end of the season. So hopefully see you again soon. And thank you for your time. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Right, thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everyone.